what we're going to show, how we're going to do this is Nikita School, Hogwarts for spies.
I think the operative word is sexy.
For me, it's just like a visual journey through dark and light.
Who's going to make it through Nikita Academy? Ronin babies.
Just because you used a gun to kill or steal or whatever you did to land yourself here does not mean you know weapons. But you will learn. Dismantle and assembly will be second nature, like breathing. You don't need to see to breathe.
This is my genre, and I owe it to my audience, and I want it to be super authentic. So we just went for it and had so much fun, actually. It looks great.
The way it came about was that I had agreed to do a script for Warner Brothers. And I had a few ideas, and I pitched them, and actually one of them was a female-driven action suspense show. It began there and then ended with Nikita.
Craig just had a really good take on it. It was Warner Brothers. They always said to me, you and Craig would get on great. Everybody said it. It was funny. It was like, and then I met him and I did. So I guess they know a little bit about me. But we're both movie fans. We're both movie nerds.
Cut.
And there's nothing you can't work out with other nerds.
And reset. Going again.
In my mind, when I wrote the script, it was sort of gritty and realistic. And what Danny did was take something that was gritty and realistic, and he added an undeniable beauty and gloss to it. That kind of gave it a rich, sort of graphic novel feel.
Just relax, Alex. Breathe in and out.
Let me out of here!
After reading anything the first time, I just like give a honest and quick reaction to it, And the second stage is I start pulling visual references and start talking about how the thing should make people feel.
We looked at a bunch of movies, and Danny said, like, this is the kind of lighting at night. A little bit of this movie and a little bit of that movie.
And you go, what I'm taking from this scene here reminds me of that scene, or what, what's inspired me about this works for that. And they, in a visual way, those two guys start knowing exactly what you and Craig have been talking about.
We're here to ensure that we get Craig's vision up on screen. That's what's most important to me. So we need to keep that line of communication open so that we can ensure that every step that we make is in line with what he's looking for.
The most interesting part of a show to me is the first time we meet on an episode, is the concept meeting. You go in and you're talking about the story. Sometimes we don't even have the script in our hand, we'll have an outline. But that's really enough because it's the problem-solving stage.
In preparing an episode, someone will have an idea of how to do a particular gag, and then that idea is built upon by somebody else. And we bring so many sort of life experiences into it, there's a snowball effect. And ultimately, you'll get to the solution by building upon everybody's ideas.
The pilot was interesting. I worked on the pilot as the art director, and most of my experiences from a film point of view, particularly as an art director on quite large American features. So I was a little concerned that, coming onto this show that we wouldn't be able to keep up that kind of standard, but it became clear really, really early on that the producers were really interested in, putting the money on the screen and getting the details and the textures and everything that I had been used to in doing the feature work.
In that sense, that's just what we love around here at Wonderland, is something with either cinematic punch or potential or something interesting, kind of visually.
There's a certain amount of pressure when you're coming in and you see, especially when we're shooting the pilot, and you see these amazing sets. really a movie cast that they put together. Great history in writers and directors and production and all that kind of stuff, and you throw it out there and you start to see some scenes and see some playback and stuff like that, and you're just like, wow, well, I hope when I get on screen, something pops, because everything else to me seems pretty amazing.
Well, we just wanted a more filmic look, so it was about like giving a sense of space, like the space becomes a character. A lot of the sets were designed with ceilings so that we could employ the low angles. So many TV shows tend to be very dialogue driven and only show close-ups. I think we want to use extremes. Extremes were kind of the thing, like very wide lenses and long lenses. Extremes in color, extremes in angles, like high angle, low angles, that kind of thing.
You do any project, and no matter what capacity you're in, your job on set is a storyteller. So, you know, all of those first choices that I make whilst reading that stick around is because that's what's propelling the story forward. That's storytelling, you know?
When Craig, brings an idea to us, we look to see if we can improve upon it, or if he's trying to work within the parameters of the show, which are tight budgetarily. We look to see where the opportunities are to expand on that. My goal is to maximize what I can put on screen.
People come and they look at our TV shows, and they look at our movies and say, wow, that looks beautiful, and we take zero credit for that. Saying that that's beautiful, or that's this, or that's that, and the style, that's like saying it's in focus. It's supposed to be in focus.
There was a lot of discussion early what Division was. I think we started with it being an abandoned subway station, and then it turned into the possibility of being, part of a missile base, which, as the story develops, we've discovered is in fact attached to a Titan missile silo.
Division could have looked very dark and kind of bureaucratic, and the Division that we have is certainly not a realistic-looking Division. Division is a heightened place. It looks like the inside of a spaceship.
At the end of the preparation period, we have what's called a tone meeting, and the tone meeting is generally with the writer of the episode, the director of the episode, myself, and Craig, and we decide not just the mechanics of the show like we do in these other meetings, but we decide the intent of every scene.
The tone in Division and, Percy's world is very monochromatic. It's cold, it's, as you can see here, gray, white, stainless steel, not a lot of color.
Division, we tend to go with a cleaner, and there was no atmosphere. It was a clean white look. And what I tried to employ there was a certain amount of mixture of warm and blue light to have extremes.
Nikita's lair is kind of the opposite to this. When we go to Nikita's lair, we have a sort of faded elegance, an abandoned ballroom on the top of an abandoned hotel.
In the pilot script, I had Nikita living in a small, missile silo that almost like a two-bedroom apartment. They sell these things for cheap out in the decommissioned silos because it'd be a great place for her to hide. Danny was the one who said, no, I think she should be in this really grand, gigantic space. It's a more emotional space. The contrast with Division, that it has these big, tall windows, and you say she's up and she's out.
One of the films that stuck with me for a long time was Coppola's The Conversation, and the way that Gene Hackman was in that warehouse space. It was obviously a space that he had come across, and it said something about his character. It made him lonely because he'd picked a huge space and just worked in a small area of it. And that was because he didn't want anybody else around him. He wanted privacy. And that stuck with me when we started looking at locations, and I started thinking of big spaces for her.
Peeling paint, big, large windows, warm light coming through those windows, strafing through.
To make her look small in the middle of them, and also to make her look isolated. And so you know, for somebody who was on the run, I just wanted to create a space that if only Division knew where it was, if you know, to keep creating a mystery to the space. What was it?
And I think that Division itself has a sort of tone. Nikita's lair has a tone, and then there are sort of all the sets and pieces that connect it.
I think what that gave us is these 3 distinct looks in the pilot that we've cycled through the series.
They're all simple tools once you know technically what you're doing. It's just, do they serve the story?
Ultimately, it starts with the writers, so when they write it and raise the bar, we'll hold up our end of the bargain, which is making sure that it gets on screen.
The overall look of the show is very sexy, and Maggie is so easy to dress. She's a sexy woman anyway. So keeping her character in form-fitting clothes gives her that edge, and I think defines looks that kill. The key is fitting everybody. All of the sweats you've seen have all been taken in and altered, and the t-shirts taken in and altered, so that's the trick. I can take a $300 suit and make it look like it's a $1,000 suit. I consider every character to be a blank canvas. Initially, I play lay psychologist. When I read a script, I make my notes about each character. I start to define the different personality traits that each character has, and then that helps me visualize how they might look. I'll just pull disparate pieces together and create a story. I really intuit everything I do. The overall palette is gray, black, and navy. What I try to do is pop it up with a little highlight of color here and there. In terms of all of the characters who play within Division, Amanda's really the only one that I can put a lot of color on. Burkoff, I can do little hits of color. Percy, who loves his accoutrements, again, you know, ties and pocket squares and all those little details are where we see hits of color, but in terms of everybody else, it's pretty dark. I like to think of things as being fashion forward rather than trend setting, because it gives it then a timeless edge. And I'm hoping that some of the looks that we are creating will be perceived as timeless. And, you know, 10 years from now, when someone looks back at our show, they might say, wow, you know, that's a great look.
I don't know. I mean, in recent years, like really what female character we've had on TV that does this much action? I mean, this is a lot.
I think my goal was to bring like feature level action to like the small screen.
The hardest thing to deal with, like especially when dealing with like television, is time. See, I mean, features, you have the luxury of having these large amounts of rehearsal time. With television, we don't. Like, you know, sometimes, you know, Maggie will work a 13, 14-hour day and then do rehearsal.
My days off, I do dedicate to not just training, but also developing new skills for her. That were gonna be the Nikita style, we called it. The things that made her the best. You know, if she was taken by Division and then trained and was their best, and the one they lost, the one they couldn't control, she has to have something above and beyond what anybody else has ever had.
What's unique to this show is you have three actors. You have Maggie, you have Shane, you have Lindsay, who are immensely physically talented.
You kind of have to bring your A game, and you hope whatever you're doing is, you know, correct.
We find that our actors, some trained, some not, in fighting, really love to do this. You hear actors say all the time they do their own stunts. Everybody here does their own fighting. They come in on their days off to rehearse, and it's very impressive, their dedication, really.
The audience today, you know, you can't really fool them as much as we used to, right? So anything we do now with the actors, I want the audience to know that it's their heroes doing everything they can on screen.
We have to grow in film and television the way that people are growing. And I think because we have this information highway now and you know, all this social media and all the things that people see and are exposed to, they know what's real and what's not, because they have the option to see the real deal and experience something that's, you know, supposedly real.
Jojo's the best, man. He's so good. I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn as far as how to sell things for the camera and, you know, different angles for the punches. I mean, you're not just fighting, you're fighting for the sell of punches or kicks or whatever. So, you know, where the camera is a whole different art.
What ends up invariably happening with action sequences, the cameras are everywhere. So it becomes a real challenge to figure out where the lights have to be.
You can't just be in the moment and kick somebody's ass. You have to be aware of so many things, you know, safety and angles, and there's just so many things to think about. Is that all you got?
The training room, the action sequences we've had in the training room have been pretty simple because it's just been a huge, big softbox.
Approach things from a filmmaker's perspective. So, you know, I like to shoot it, you know, edit it, you know, shoot it, edit it, pre-visualize it, so I can kind of physically convey like what I think the rhythm and timing of the fights should look like. Because otherwise, if I just give you a series of movements, it's just a series of movements. But if you have a series of movements that's combined with story and you know, combine a story and pushes the story forward, then you have something that's memorable and everyone remembers.
Back in LA, I've been trained by different people in weapons and tactics, but soldiers who had come back from Iraq and also LAPD SWAT. I was trained too for a month by them before I did Mission Impossible. So I definitely had a set of skills, but it was taking it from those guys and turning it into something that was a little more feminine, a little bit faster, and something that would be believable for a woman to have these set of skills. And it's not that we can't have the same skill set as men, but it would have to be different to work for us, because obviously we're just scale-wise, we're different.
It's technically, in a lot of ways, very unrealistic for a woman who is just physically weaker. Women are physically weaker than men. So if we're to succeed on film in these ways, it has to be a little bit more creative. It has to be physics. It has to be visually believable.
And if the action is not story-driven the way I want it to be, or character-specific, then we go back to square one and we scrap it and we redesign it, and I watch and scrap again and redesign, and it's a whole process.
Sometimes I'll get a call from Maggie, you know, which will be like, why are we off me for this? You can't tell it's me, you know? And she's very passionate about it all the way through. She'll be like, you know, we need to see this move and we need to see it go all the way.
I think it really makes a difference in the way these fight scenes look, to be able to have the cast members' face there and not just some stand-in, you know, doing the work.
Everyone likes to see a chick kick ass.
Can I see your ID badge, ma'am?
Yes, of course.
Told you. There's something alluring about guns. If you put a gun down here now, everybody in the room will at one point go and pick it up and look at it and study it. It's something, it's an extension of your arm. It's various sexual references to it too, but it's power.
I mean, I just like the idea of a woman being powerful enough to handle a gun and do it with great proficiency. That's fundamentally exciting.
This is the part where you lower the gun.
They're the hero's swords, you know, and they also say something about the character.
Weapons and tactics always has to be purposeful, and if you know that, and it comes from that place, it's gonna be real to the audience. A weapon should feel like an extension of yourself, in my opinion, right? So when you're doing anything, you're writing or you're running, or your legs don't feel awkward, your feet don't feel, your hands don't feel strange, it should feel second nature to you.
We might start off with Maggie Q's weapon. We started off at the beginning of the season with the SIG 239. It served us very well through the episodes. Maggie has a lot of input on what she uses on set. The final decision was hers for this pistol. I gave her, I think there were 4 or 5 options to begin with, and she is very tactile. She likes to pick them up and see how they feel. When it came time to change up, we switched out the SIG 239, which has only 8 rounds in the magazine, to her new weapon, which is the Walther P99. This allows us to do a lot more rounds, almost twice the ammunition capacity when we're on set. It also has a tactical rail on it, which allows us to attach a light or laser unit. We can do more with this pistol now with Maggie than we could with the other one.
Like I said, when I worked with the SWAT team and when I worked with the police and I worked with these soldiers, I worked with the SEALs, it was sort of like everything that they do is born out of purpose. And so everything I do should be born out of purpose, with a real, genuine sort of reason and tactical way about me.
We like weapons on the show.
Good guy guns, bad guy guns. This is the H&K MP7. It has a very large magazine capacity for such a small gun. It has an integrated rail on top so we can put optical sights on it. Some of the bad guy guns, this is the P90. It's made by FN. This has a 50-round detachable magazine. This is Roan's gun. This is a standard Beretta 92. What we added to it was a suppressor. It's also very, very large with the suppressor on it, so it's very intimidating. This is one of the new pieces that we've introduced to the show. It's called an F2000. It takes standard M16 style magazines. You can replace this as well with an M203 style grenade launcher or a tactical rail system.
Guns make us, feel powerful.
We knew that we needed a hero's theme for her, but I found that for this show, there was a lot of emotion from the very beginning. And also, there's a lot of things to hang melodies on in this show, themes that I didn't anticipate. I didn't know. I mean, I thought, okay, we'll have like a kick-ass theme and probably a theme for some love or some sadness, but I didn't know it was going to go into all these different relationships. For me, it's all instinctual and it's all intuitive. You find that certain things resonate or they don't. And I can never intellectualize about it beforehand or really after the fact. It's like as you're going through it, you find that the material will support musical themes or it won't. I probably would start with this rhythmic idea. It's pretty simple, you know. Add some guitar to it, and then start playing. I would come up with rhythmic ideas and start adding them on. What's fun is if because you're not doing something that's traditional, whenever you kind of open up a sequence and you're going to add some guitarish sound, if it's in tune, you kind of tend to go to things that are chordal and traditional. But if it's out of tune, then different things kind of happen under your hands. These action scenes, every time, there's always more going on than just the action. There's always regret, or there's fear, or there's longing, all the time. So, and that gives it an emotional base. It gives you a place to go, and it gives you a chance to incorporate thematic stuff that brings it beyond just aggression. Action scenes, right when you're about to get bored of a particular kind of sound or tempo, they change it up. So I can go a different direction. And it's really, really, I mean, I guess the editing too, really well done. So the music keeps renewing itself. If a scene is balanced in terms of the way it's constructed, of course the direction too, the way it's constructed, then you can bring these different ways of refreshing it musically without any trouble. And they've really done that masterfully in this show.
I think that it's the privilege of the audience to demand cinema week in, week out on television. And I think we're living in a renaissance age of television where what you see every week on television supersedes that which is coming out on Fridays in the movie theater. And the days of apologizing for TV are long, long over.
I think we're doing a great job with it. I think the shows are beautiful. I think the girls look beautiful, the guys look strong, and Division always has a great sharp edge to it, and I think it's what sets the show apart, really.
I think that people are and will and are taking notice.
So I'm very happy logistically and aesthetically that we've managed to accomplish everything the script needed us to, and a little bit more.
For me, I think the human element is what makes Nikita strong. Forget the guns and forget the fighting and forget what she's up against and forget what she takes on. I truly believe that her vulnerability is what allows us to connect with her.
That's very empowering to see a woman really own it and get along in a male-dominated world. It's attractive, I guess.
We all sort of grew our hair out and moved to Hollywood because we wanted to rock and roll and tell fun stories, not because we wanted to go into commercial real estate. And it's fun to have an outlet like Nikita where you can have some fun, shoot some guns, and kick some ass.
This is such a different world to me. I've never been in the crazy, fast, paced action world, and this is kind of fun.